Good evening. It's November 1st, 2016. We're here for our first November regularly scheduled Select Board meeting. We know that the meeting was officially warned because we convened at 5:15 and went into executive session to discuss contracts, leasing or sale of real estate, and appointment of public officer or employee. I want to begin by welcoming everybody who's in attendance tonight and everybody who's watching us on TV, whether live or recorded. I want to welcome staff members, members of the public, member of the press, BCTV operators, and our ASL interpreters. The first item of business on our public meeting agenda is to approve the minutes from October 18. So we have a motion. We have a motion to approve the minutes from October 18. Does anybody on the board or anybody who's in attendance have any suggestions or comments about those minutes? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the minutes from October 18 as presented, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 4-0. I'll note that we're down one board member tonight. And I'll also note that the Arts Committee proposals for murals at the Transportation Center and the High Grove parking lot are being deferred, likely to the first December 2016 meeting, because the artists were not available to be present tonight to speak about those projects. So we will be taking those up again, but they won't be called on the agenda tonight. The next item on tonight's agenda is chair's remarks. First, I'm going to just announce publicly for the last time before Election Day that this year, voting for the presidential election on November 8th, next Tuesday, will be at the VFW at 40 Black Mountain Road. It's my understanding that at this time, that's a one-time only location for the election, but everybody's encouraged to go vote and to do that at the VFW at 40 Black Mountain Road. Bus service will be running free on Election Day and making stops at the polls at Black Mountain Road location. So people can go vote. Residents have until November 2nd at 5 p.m. That's till tomorrow, close of business at 5 p.m. to register to vote. And early voting, it continues. It's ongoing right now, and it continues until 5 o'clock, close of business on Monday, 11/7. Residents can vote between 8:30 a.m. and 5 p.m. any weekday between now and close of business next Monday, and the town clerk's office also will be open from 9 to noon on Saturday, November 5th for early voting as well. So everybody's encouraged to go vote either early or at Black Mountain Road VFW next Tuesday, and anybody who's not registered is urged to vote by tomorrow at 5 p.m. I also want to note and acknowledge that we have received a very substantial body of correspondence from people around the community focusing on the need for safe sidewalks and for repairs to our sidewalks. So I want to commend whoever has been doing the organizing and encouraging people to write letters to Select Board, because we've been receiving them. We would, in the ordinary course, be addressing sidewalk repair and replacement as part of the budget process. And rather than gathering and printing all those letters out with correspondence at this meeting, what we're doing is we're holding all of those letters urging us to fix the sidewalks, and we'll be distributing them with the budget materials. That's all I have for chair's remarks. Next on the agenda is town manager's comments.
I'll just supplement the comment that you just made about the sidewalks by letting everybody know that the individuals who were interested in promoting a greater degree of sidewalk repair and replacement in the community asked what would be the most effective way to do that, and I suggested through the town's annual budget process, and so that's why this is the moment when we're receiving a lot of communication about that.
Good timing.
And indeed, as we'll talk about later tonight and in the weeks ahead, we are proposing to increase funding, and consistent with the discussions that the Select Board has been having also in recent weeks about traffic safety and pedestrian safety, we are proposing an increase to sidewalk funding for the upcoming budget. I have 3 items this evening. The first is just to remind anyone out in the public who has seen the news release and the information that we've distributed, and to make sure that others in the community who may not have heard about this yet hear it now, that we were unable to do water main flushing this fall of the public water system in Brattleboro because of the drought conditions earlier in the summer, and then the replacement of the million-gallon tank later in the summer. The combination of those conditions made it unsafe based on protecting the water supply, making sure that particularly we had enough water for a fire event if we needed to draw unusually large amounts through the system. So we're always cautious about that when we've got an unusual situation. We had that both early and late in the summer this year, so we did not flush the water mains. Because of that, there is some discoloration in some parts of town. It's intermittent. And so it's possible that in the weeks ahead, we will do flushing again in the spring for sure. And we may possibly, depending on weather, be able to do flushing, at least some amount of flushing, after the new million-gallon tank comes online. But that's very iffy because that's going to be in December and the weather may be cold enough to not make it feasible to do the flushing at that time. So the bottom line of all of this is that we all are likely to see some occasional discoloration in our water, and the assurance I want to provide to the public is the water is safe. The discoloration is from small amounts of solids that come through the pipes in the system. We test the water all the time, and it's meeting all of the public health safety standards. There's no hazard that's presented by this, but it is an aesthetic issue, and it's something that people, if you encounter it at your home, people should just run the cold tap, for a few minutes, and that should flush out the line right there at the sink. And if you have any questions or concerns about your own property, the number to call for the Brattleboro Water Department is 254-4255. I also wanted to announce that the Vermont Transportation Board is going to be holding a public forum here in Brattleboro next Wednesday, November 9th at 6 p.m. regarding trains. They are going to be at the Museum and Arts Center at 10 Vernon Street. And the topics to be covered there are living with railroads as neighbors, starting commuter rail service that would link Brattleboro to various points in Massachusetts, possible passenger rail expansion within Vermont to both the western corridor between Rutland and Burlington and the corridor that runs up to Montreal, rail side economic development, and rail safety, including crossings, trespassing, and response to potential emergency incidents. It's part of a statewide process. This Vermont Transportation Board is going around and holding several of these public forums in various locations around the state. And again, they'll be here to hear from the southeastern Vermont public on Wednesday, November 9th at 6 p.m. at the Museum and Arts Center. And my third and final comment tonight is congratulations to the police department. Exciting news that we've received that the International Association of Chiefs of Police has recognized the Brattleboro Police Department as recipient of, or a finalist for the Community Policing Award that the IACP gives each year. This recognizes outstanding community policing initiatives undertaken by law enforcement agencies worldwide, recognizes police organizations that use the power of collaboration and partnership to make communities safer from crime and terrorism. The winners and the finalists provide a model for improved police services on issues that are specific to their individual communities, but are also valuable for all communities around the world. And I want to congratulate Chief Fitzgerald and the entire department. And point out that it's no small honor. In addition to being nice recognition by a respected organization for the work that the department is doing and has been doing for some time now to build relationships in the community, this is actually, because it's the International Association of Chiefs of Police, there were police departments from foreign countries that received this honor for some of the larger population. There's 5 different population categories, and the town's police department was actually the second ranking community for all communities worldwide under 20,000 population. So a great honor, and thank you, Gunny and the team.
Next item on the agenda is Select Board comments and committee reports.
I have a report.
Yes,
or a
please.
comment or an announcement. There's going to be a community open house for James Van Slavin. And it's going to be November 20th from 1 to 3 p.m. at 118 Elliott Street, which is the new event space across from the fire department. And we want everybody and anybody who knew James or didn't know James to please come. We're going to serve dessert, and BCTV is going to be playing some of James's shows that he did. And we'll have time for people to share their James stories, because there are many. So I hope everybody comes. We want to make it a celebration and an uplifting event to be like James. And if anybody has any questions or wants to help, you can, let me know or let Dick know. I'm at the chamber during the day and Dick is on the street. So either one of us can help you. But we hope everybody comes. And you'll hear more publicity. We'll be sending around things. But please come.
Just a brief one. I was in the town clerk's office last week, and that mentioned that we're averaging about 80 early voters per day. Now it's more, up closer to 100. Yeah, so obviously more than 100 now, more than 100 a day. Okay, so obviously people want to get this over with. So I just want to encourage people to be sure to get out and vote, and feel free to stop by, because they can handle large numbers.
Dick?
Yeah, follow-up, I want to thank Kate, Core, and Jan for really taking the lead on setting this afternoon up for James. They've been the nuts and bolts of putting this together. My name's attached to it, but they've done all the grunt work, so I really want to thank them for that. On a much lighter note, I'm going to take off my select board hat and put my flower man hat on. The hardware that I purchased for the flowers in town is a national company. It's called Kinsman. And they asked me to send some photos in. And in their spring catalog, a photo of Plenty Park was chosen for their catalog, which I think is pretty outstanding. There's probably 8 or 10 photos from across the country, and we were chosen. So whether that brings people to town, who knows? But any publicity that's free publicity is good publicity in my eyes. So thank you to Kinsman. I told them I'd give them a plug since they gave us a big plug in their magazine. So thank you.
Next item on the agenda is public participation. This is a good opportunity for anybody who's in attendance to speak to anything that's not on the agenda. Is there anybody who wants to speak to something that's not on the agenda? Yes. Michael and Stuart.
Yeah, Michael Bosworth. This is peripherally related to the police fire project agenda item, but I don't think you would get to it. I can explain. I'm here in my role as president of the West Brattleboro Association, along with my colleague Stuart McDermott, who's also a trustee. And we the West Brattleboro Association has been looking for ways to put holiday lights on the triangular village green in West Brattleboro for a couple of years now, and there's no power there. And so the opportunity is arising now because of the new West Brattleboro fire station being built and the plans to extend power from there across to the corner of the green for future use for traffic lights or other uses, that we could additionally, there could additionally be an outlet put on one of the poles and a meter to measure use of power. So we would definitely like to see that happen. We think that would become a resource for the town as a whole. We would use it for things like the lights. We've also had other events there in the past, so we would use it for those type of events. But I think anybody in the community would be able to use it, and it's overseen by Rec and Parks Department, the maintenance of it. So we would like, and Peter has gotten the police fire team to cost what that would be, how much that would cost. So the outlet and the meter would come to about $2,500. So we would like to see the town cover that cost. We also understand that the extension of the power probably is not feasible for this holiday season because of all the rest of the work that's going on there. But as we look down the road, if that could somehow be covered by the overall budget or some way to cover that cost, that's what we're here to advocate for.
I'm Stuart McDermott, as Michael said, the trustee of the West Brattleboro Association, and I don't want to repeat what Michael has eloquently said. I just want to say that I represent the thousands of more West Brattleboro citizens who think this would be a very good addition for us, West Brattleboro. Not that expensive, and it would definitely be appreciated in the years to come, no matter who's using it. Thanks.
Thank you. We'll have to figure out how and when to look at this issue, but thanks for letting us know about it.
Thank you.
Anybody else who's in attendance who wants to speak to something under public participation? Next item on the agenda is under unfinished business, update on the police fire facilities project. Mr. Elwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the West Brattleboro Fire Station continues on schedule, and if you've driven by, have seen that it looks like a fire station now. So the full scale of the building is evident, and a lot of the details are becoming more evident, and soon it'll be actually closing in. But the major work for the next couple of weeks is going to be focused on some continued less visible activity, the pouring of the apparatus base slab and the exterior pads and front apron. So there'll be a significant amount of concrete work going on. There will be interior roughing in of plumbing, electrical, and mechanical systems, and the propane tank will be installed underground and the related piping for that system. So everything's moving along very well. No issues arising in West Brattleboro. Central Fire Station, the work is beginning this week. The contractor and the site work subcontractor, LaRock & Sons, are on scene, and work is starting. The work is going to be not too visible from the street initially because it's going to go on out behind the existing fire station, first preparing the site and then moving on into construction of the addition. But we'll provide these regular updates as that building also begins to come up out of the ground.
As you're giving us updates about this, can you give us a little bit of information moving forward about impacts on day-to-day operations at fire?
Sure. Yes, there's been some very extensive planning that's been done at Central in particular because, of course, out west, the existing building has continued to function as is while the new building's being built. Likewise, when we move up to doing the renovation for the police department, PD will be operating from here still while that's going on. But it has required a great deal of planning and coordination in anticipation of how the work will go on at Central, and the fire department will continue to function from there as their headquarters, and we'd be happy to provide that as part of the update.
Thank you.
The police station, we have several different aspects to the update tonight, and one action, important piece of business for the select board to act upon. So the competitive bidding is ongoing for what will lead to the guaranteed maximum price for that part of the project. And we expect to receive that from DEW within the next couple of weeks, and then have it considered on November 30th by the Police Fire Facilities Building Committee, and on December 6th by the Select Board. The purchase of the building we're getting very close now. All of the environmental review is complete and has been accepted, and we're now just down to the attorneys finalizing the paperwork for the closing and scheduling that closing. We expect that to happen within the next 2 weeks. And the reformer lease, as you know from the materials that were provided and the discussions that we've had, that lease will become effective upon closing. We will, as we assume ownership of the building, the lease would go into effect immediately, and would continue for a little over 4 years. So it's basically a 4-year lease, but with the additional month and a half or so, with an initial expiration or expiration of the initial term on December 31st of 2020. New England Newspapers, which is the parent company to the Brattleboro Reformer, will have options for 2 3-year extensions beyond the 2020 expiration of the initial term. They will pay the town $12 per square foot to lease the 2,200 square feet that's at the southeast corner of the building. That rent will receive in monthly installments, but the annual total for the first year will be $26,400. That's been added to the proposed budget. And the rent will increase automatically by 2% on each year on the anniversary date of the lease. The town will, as the first piece of business with the contractor when we go up to actually conduct the renovation, we'll separate the space that's going to be leased and then do the upfit there before moving into the rest of the building. And the reason for that is so that the reformer can move into that space in the southeast corner, occupy its leased area, and then have that be all sealed off from the rest of the building, and then the renovation for the rest for the police department will proceed. We expect that that'll begin in December, that work will begin in December and be finished in January or February. The estimated cost of the upfit is $60,000. Whatever the actual cost of the upfit is, the reformer will be paying half and the town will be paying half, and the reformer will reimburse to the town its half in 48 equal installments. So we'll complete the work, identify the actual costs, and then divide the reformer's half by 48, and they'll be paying, in addition to the monthly rent, that upfit charge as well for each of the first 48 months during the initial term of the lease. Bob Fisher has drafted the lease and participated in the negotiations that we've had with New England Newspapers and the modifications that have been made to it. He's approved it in its current form, and he and I recommend that you approve it and authorize me to sign it on behalf of the town.
Does anybody on the board have any questions about the lease agreement that's been circulated for review by the board previously, and then as part of the materials distributed in anticipation of this meeting? Anybody on the board? Is there anybody who's in attendance who's got any questions or comments about the lease agreement that's being presented to the select board for potential approval between the town of Brattleboro and New England Newspapers? Well, then we're ready for motion, please.
I move we approve a lease between the town of Brattleboro and New England Newspapers Incorporated as set forth in the lease agreement attached to the town manager Elwell's memorandum dated October 27, 2016.
We have a motion to approve the lease between town of Brattleboro and the reformer's parent company. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? That carries 4-0. Any further business under police fire?
Just one short update, which is that I've not authorized any additional expenditures from the owners, any owner's expenses since the last report. So we're continuing to, we're continuing to do really well at operating within budget and maintaining the contingency funds for addressing those items that we've been discussing that are outside the actual scope of the project. Hopefully it'll continue that way as we continue on with the remainder of the project.
Is there anything further that we want to talk about with respect to police fire? Then the next item on the agenda is also a piece of unfinished business. It's a traffic safety, pedestrian safety improvements with FY17 money. So I see Hannah and Steve here, and Peter's also been talking about those matters. Do you all want to come up to the table and talk with us about your recommendations? While Hannah and Steve are coming up, we'll note that there had been a proposal to spend additional money in the current year's budget, or out of the current year's budget funds, to make traffic safety, pedestrian safety improvements. And we asked the Department of Public Works to make a recommendation to us about how that money could best be spent given our overall traffic safety device and process menu. And so Hannah and Steve have made a recommendation to us, and they're here to talk about it.
Thank you. Steve Barrett, Director of Public Works.
Hannah Tyler, Highway and Utilities Superintendent.
We sat down and reviewed and listened to the board, their request to come up with a menu for traffic safety items. So what we did is we compiled a list, and we also looked at the town as a whole. Many of the safety features that we have put in town, we have been focusing on some of the main roadways in town, the Western Avenue, Canal Street, and such. So what we've done is that we've combined different techniques to blanket pretty much all of the town in different areas. So with that, one of the programs that's been very successful is the rapid rectangular flashing beacons. What we're proposing, and the next item on the agenda, Hannah will talk about the grants that we have received, is we think it's appropriate to use $7,400, $8,000 as a match for those grants, which would get us 2 devices in town. And the locations for those is, one of them we have looked at Putney Road and near North Street, and we think that's appropriate because it sends a message as people come off the state highway entering into town, and they'll see one of these devices, so it starts to send a signal that we're conscious about pedestrian safety, same as in West Brattleboro. And we also have one on Canal Street. So we're looking at also adding another device on Canal Street near Washington Street. That's a very busy intersection at Burge and Washington Street, and currently we have a device up at Hospital Hill, which we partnered with BMH to install. So that's why we picked that location. And then moving forward, we chose to use some yield for pedestrian signs. They're called in-street crossing. And that identifies crosswalks. We've had them throughout town. The police department originally purchased those devices through a grant. And so what we'd like to do is purchase 20 of those devices and use them throughout town. And we've selected various different streets in town, from Canal Street, Putney Road, Linden, Park Place, Guilford Street, Elliott Street, Spruce, Marlborough Road. And Marlborough Road would be as you come into town, again, to send a message for pedestrian safety as you enter into the town. And also Western Avenue near Crosby, it's a popular place for people to cross, to use Solar Hill and to use the hiking trails. That crosswalk went in just a few years ago. And also at Cotton Mill Hill, where we have a lot of school children that cross in that area. And also Oak Grove Avenue, which is a crossing for the school children. And Ledgewood Heights, we think that's a key. We've heard a lot of discussion about speed on Fairview Street and such. And the one last item we'd like to put on this list is for the delineator posts. And those you see up in West Brattleboro, they give a visual assist of narrowing the road. And they've been successful there on Western Avenue, and they need to be replaced. So the total of that is $30,110. And that's what we're looking to appropriate, and that's what we're looking to use the funds for.
Steve, the delineator posts are the same ones that we see out by Academy School?
Yes.
Okay, and they come out, obviously, in the winter.
They're removable. In fact, we'll be taking those out shortly when we get this surprise snowstorm. But normally we would wait into November and then we remove them. But they do get hit and they wear out, so.
And on the in-street crosswalk signs, looks like they're bolted down. Do they come out?
No, these are actually, they have a weight on them and they can be put down. They can be secured if we need to, but they don't have to be.
So they come out when the
They
snow
do.
falls too?
They would have to be removed seasonally, yeah.
Other questions from anybody on the board? Dick?
As I'm looking at this, it looks like you want to use $7,400 for grant funding to purchase 2 extra lights.
That's correct.
And where would they go?
Those were approved through the grant to be installed at the Union Hill crosswalk, the crosswalk across Western Avenue, and the crosswalk across Western Avenue at Holton Home.
So these were already things that you appropriated, so instead of something additional, you want to take this money here and use it for something that you were proposing for before.
That's correct. Yeah, we didn't know if we would get the grant or not. So this is one place that we would like to utilize that money. We've utilized the existing fund in the traffic safety line item to purchase an RRFB that is installed currently on Linden Street. And that was a partnership with the Brattleboro Retreat, which we're thankful for. So yes, we were looking, this is an opportunity for us within our budget to support traffic safety items. So the answer is yes.
I'm still unclear. I'm going to need to understand, so people are going to ask me. The match funding for VTrans for 2 at 70, and 2 of them cost $7,400 together, so they're 37 each.
No,
No,
there's
it's a
7,400. Oh.
Okay.
It's a 50% match.
Oh, okay. And
since
then
we've
the other
received the grant.
14 is for the 2 that gotcha.
That's right.
Follow-up, where were you going to get the money for the matching grant had I not raised this issue before?
Well, it would probably have to come out of some of our other line items. And it could be sidewalks. Traditionally, that's what we'll have to, use the funds for, or we would discuss it with the town manager on where we would get those funds.
Well,
If we,
I have to say that I think in the motion, there wasn't anything about using this for matching grants. And so I do have a problem with this in terms of using this money for something that was already proposed rather than take it out of the operating budget. I made a concession because I was looking for 4 of these lights, and I certainly am reluctantly supporting the fact that you're going to do some new signage and put in some crosswalk delineators, but I never thought that we would be using this money here for matching grant for something that was already proposed. And I really think that's somewhat disingenuous.
I'd like to inquire about the timing of installation of any of these items. Could you talk to us about that?
Sure. Really seasonally, the end of construction season's here. So none of these purchases really would be put to use till next spring.
Anybody else on the board right now?
I don't have a problem with when they go in. That's not the issue here. The real issue here is the matching funding for the, which is really something out of left field, and I really don't think is appropriate for this right here.
Anybody else on the board right now? Is there anybody in attendance who wants to speak to this? It seems to me that we've sort of taken an unusual approach to responding to the request to do traffic safety-related improvements. Generally, we would plan for these things ahead into the next budget year. And when the proposal was made to allocate money out of this year's budget to devote to traffic safety devices, sort of unusual thing to do, to pull money out of the existing year's budget when we're not really even towards the end of the year, and we're certainly not past snow season, so we don't know to what extent there's going to be potential surpluses at the end of the year. So to the extent that there's a goal of doing more than what's set out in this memo, which is to install 4 additional blinking lights, one at Union Hill and one at Linden Lodge. Holden Home on Western Ave. I guess Linden Lodge isn't there anymore. And then one at Canal Street at Washington and one at North Street, along with all these other devices. My vote will be to approve this as it's presented, and then once we get past the snow season, as we're ramping up to do this work, to the extent that there's more money available, we may want to do more work at that time. But we will have already been through the planning and budgeting for fiscal year 2017, and we'll also have 2018, and we'll also have a picture at that point about what money we're going to be spending in the coming fiscal year for various sorts of improvements. So I'm in favor of approving this as a plan and a roadmap right now, and then if we want to improve and increase the funding later in the year, that's something we could consider at that time. So that's what I'm in favor of doing. Dick?
You know, Mr. Chairman, when I first proposed this, you're right, this came out of left field, and this came about because we had a pedestrian hit on Western Ave. My original proposal was to take money from the 1%, which had roughly $70,000 or $80,000 over the expected income from it. The town manager, administration, and you, and I believe a couple other board members were somewhat reluctant to use that funding because you were afraid it was going to set a precedent. I, on the other hand, was reluctant to use operating funds, given the fact that we were 1 month into the year and talking about what you just talked about. We don't know what kind of winter we're going to have. We don't know what kind of year we're going to have in terms of spending. This was a much safer way to fund this, in my eyes, rather than touch the operating budget. There was opposition by the board to get this through. I acquiesced. And then now we talk, you're bringing up the fact that, yes, this is unusual, but the fact is that when we were talking about this, these are 2 lights that they're talking about that they were going to do and needed to find funding. And so that was way before the fact that I had made this proposal. So that's what I'm really a little bit miffed by here, is saying, okay, here's this money, then we don't have to touch anything else in the operating budget. So it really is bothersome to me when we put things in a slant, when I had made an original proposal to go about using funds that wouldn't have an impact on the operating budget, and there was opposition to that. So from that standpoint, I don't disagree with you. Spending, this is a little bit different, but we spend money all the time. And certainly I made the point of saying we have $800,000 in surplus money, And do I think that this is a good expenditure of money? Yes, I do. I think that public safety is a huge issue for us, and I'm glad to see that it's going to be addressed in future budgets coming forward. But I really think that when I saw this and got clarification from it, it really does bother me a little bit. So I think I'm going to vote against this.
Peter?
I just want to make clear that the advice that I offered you in the first instance wasn't out of a discomfort or trying to slant this one way or the other, but because it wouldn't have been legally proper to identify a source of funds other than just the operating budget as the place from which this expenditure would be made. In order to spend surplus funds, which is what that was, the collection, we did have a very good year in the rooms and meals, and that over collection, if you will, the additional funds collected beyond what had been budgeted became surplus funds within the general fund, part of the general fund balance. And those monies can only be used when town meeting has authorized that they be used. So in the current year's operating budget in FY17, we don't have authority to spend $30,000 of surplus funds or fund balance for these purposes, which is why I suggested that if you desired as a board to go ahead and proceed with some traffic safety and pedestrian safety improvements using this fiscal year's budget, that it would need to just be a reallocation of funds from other things within this operating budget.
Is there any further discussion about this item relating to potential installation of traffic safety devices? Does anybody want to make a motion?
Take a turn, Kate?
I will do it. I move to approve the Department of Public Works recommendations for installation of certain traffic safety and pedestrian safety equipment as set forth in the memorandum dated October 21, 2016, for a total cost of $30,110.
We have a motion to spend $30,110 for traffic safety and pedestrian safety equipment as presented in the 10/21/16 memo. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstaining? All right, you're opposed?
Opposed.
All right, so that carries 3-1. The first item under new business is to consider acceptance and appropriation of the bicycle and pedestrian program grant for $8,000 for half of those flashing lights at Western Ave at Union Street and Holton Home. Peter?
That's exactly what's before you. So we did apply for this grant. We've been awarded the grant, and staff is recommending that you approve this evening the acceptance and appropriation of the grant, which, along with the matching money that you just approved, would allow us to move forward with the installation of these two locations in the spring.
Any further questions or comments from everybody on board?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So we're getting $8,000. And we just appropriated $7,400. So what's
The remainder is in kind. We'll document hours of work within the Public Works staff that'll exceed.
And that's the 8,000.
And we're allowed to do that. That's right.
Okay.
So it's 8 and 8 make 16,000.
Okay.
But we needed the 7,400 as part of the actual purchase of the items.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments from anybody on the board? I want to thank the Department of Public Works and Ms. Tyler for actively pursuing these grant opportunities. This grant opportunity and then the potential one that's still being considered up in the center of West Brattleboro are really excellent ways for us to be supplementing our local taxpayer-raised and real estate tax-raised funds to be able to improve traffic safety all over town. And this will provide for having these flashing pedestrian lights in the main corridors coming into town in various places. So we'll have 2 on Canal Street. We'll have 4 on Western Ave. We'll have 1 on North Street, and then we'll have 1 right here on Linden Street. So that's all essentially the major thoroughfares into town having those lights posted at various spots. So that's a really good thing. Thank you. Any further discussion about that grant? Anybody want to make a motion? I move to accept and appropriate a bicycle and pedestrian program grant in the amount of $8,000 from the Vermont Agency of Transportation to help pay the cost of 2 rapid rectangular flashing beacon devices for installation at the crosswalks on Western Avenue near Union Hill and Western Avenue near Holton Home. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 4-0. Thanks for coming. The next item on the agenda is the very first preliminary discussion of our budget. And I'll note, just as a visual aid, that on a table when we came in today was our budget book. We got it today, and I think the plan is that Peter's just going to give us a brief overview, and then we're going to set the schedule by which we're going to consider this budget in working towards its final approval so it can be warned for town meeting consideration. Peter?
Thank you. I will be brief this evening so that when we go into greater detail about the major items within the budget and all of the details week by week in the couple of months ahead, that we do that once you've had a chance to actually look through the budget document that you've received this evening. But I wanted to hit a couple of highlights because we've had some conversations here and at town meeting about certain priorities of the town. So here most recently about traffic safety and pedestrian safety, here and at town meeting for the last couple of years about the need to invest more in our capital infrastructure and our equipment and rolling stock, and a few other priorities of the town, all of which are going to take funding, and as we knew, that would create some additional strain on the budget, hopefully to be offset by either new revenues or some savings elsewhere. And to a great degree, that's what this budget is reflecting. So as highlights, I just wanted to note that in the area of traffic safety, we are proposing $30,000 of increased funding in the operating budget above and beyond what has historically been a recurring small funding amount within the Public Works budget, and $35,000 increase in capital above and beyond the funding that has traditionally been there for sidewalk replacement. So the vast majority of these funds, the $65,000 increase in commitment to traffic safety improvements in the community, would be geared towards specifically pedestrian safety. Some of it would be broader in terms of one involves some intersection design work, and some of the pedestrian safety work would also benefit, promote bicycle safety. And then capital reinvestment, we're proposing $1 million for projects and $500,000 for equipment. That's a 50% increase in the commitment to capital overall in terms of the transfer from the general fund. The total value of the projects and equipment that are proposed actually exceeds that, but as you'll see when we review the capital budget, there are other sources of funds. So there are grant monies that are available. There's also some use of fund balance, and there's, in the case of the dog park and the skate park, we have the estimated cost of those shown as part of the capital program, but offset by 100% donated funds or grant funds as the funding source for that, per the prior direction of the board. So the $1.5 million that we're talking about here is the actual transfer from the general fund to the capital fund, and in each case it's increasing by about 50% over the level of funding last year. In the one case for the infrastructure projects, and in the other case for equipment. almost half of the proposed funding for capital projects, almost half of that $1 million, will provide some level of energy efficiency benefit as well. So some of it is explicitly coming from the recommendations that were included in the energy audits that we received earlier this year, and other parts of it will be just in the normal course of replacement of different parts of our town facilities where the method of replacement is intended to also promote some energy efficient outcome in that. So we're hoping that these will not only be wise investments in infrastructure, but also provide some ongoing savings in the operating budget as well. The police fire facilities, this will be the peak year for principal and interest. We knew that. We knew it at the time that the decisions were being made. We had cost estimates on what the impact of that would be for the town's operating budget. At the almost $400,000 impact of that is offset in part by the favorable interest rate that we were able to receive for the it's not offset, but it's actually a lower number than was previously expected because of the favorable interest rate that we achieved when we went to market. And in the debt service line item, it is offset substantially by a reduction in the amount of the debt service that's required for the town's 2010 series bonds, so that the overall increase in the debt service is a little less than $200,000 as we absorb this peak year impact for the police fire facilities. In the operating budget, there's also almost $90,000 of operation and maintenance costs for 62 Black Mountain Road. As we know from the discussion earlier this evening and your approval of the lease, that'll be partially offset by the lease revenue from the reformer's continued occupancy of space there. In addition, there's employee pay and benefit costs are going to be essentially flat this year. That's because the approximately $180,000 worth of pay increases are offset by approximately $190,000 of savings in employee benefits. So we have a year where we're implementing the results of our collective bargaining with 3 of the 4 unions. We have funds that are proposed in this budget that would represent what we believe would be the likely financial impact in the resolution of negotiations with the 4th union. And due to the substantial savings that we've been able to achieve in health insurance and retirement costs for the town, that in this first year of implementing those agreements will cover the cost of the pay increases that employees will be receiving. I just want to remind everybody for the record that the $190,000 of savings in the employee benefits did not come was not achieved by reducing the value of those benefits, but rather in the case of the health insurance, maintained the same value as had been previously provided for all town employees. And in the case of the retirement, maintained the same benefit for public safety employees, but provided a better benefit than previously received by the civilian employees, and a benefit that is a comparable structure and a different details, but a comparable structure to what had been already provided to public safety. So we've actually, the net of all that is improving the benefit package for the employees at a very substantial savings to the taxpayers. We had a larger than normal surplus at year end FY16, as you'll recall, and so that has given us some flexibility and been a part of the funding for the substantial increase in the proposed commitment to capital projects for this year. We'll go into that in greater detail when we go over the specific budget proposals in a few weeks. But it's important to note that we're trying to seize an opportunity here to catch up on some things that need to be caught up on, as well as to implement the energy efficiency improvements that will create some savings for the town in the longer run, using the larger than usually available surplus so as to commit those monies to one-time expenditures. We've had a lot of conversation here about that in the past. We'll have some more conversation about that in the weeks ahead. But we want to be careful not to use that just for straight out tax relief, or that'll come back to haunt us a year from now when we have to make up not only whatever increase may be required for next year's budget, for the FY19 budget, but also the catching up to the usage for this year. Having said that, a year ago, you made a decision, actually earlier this year, but for the last budget that we completed together, you made a strategic decision to use $134,225 of fund balance as a smoothing in to help absorb the initial impact of the police fire bonds cost to the operating budget. We talked about possibly using none of that money. We talked about possibly using a full $268,500, and we talked about using the 50-50 between the 2 years. You looked at the likely impact on the tax rates for each of the affected fiscal years and made the strategic decision at that time, or to recommend to town meeting. Town meeting did approve that half of that available money from last year be used to smooth in the impact in this current budget of the interest-only payments, and then the full year of interest and principal payments. The remainder of the 134 would be used in FY18. So we have, in the recommended budget, reflected that. So there's $500,000 of recommended use of fund balance for capital projects, and $134,225 as the second year of smoothing. The impact of all of this and the many other details that we'll go over in the weeks ahead would be a property tax increase. If the budget is approved as it is proposed this evening, it'll result in a property tax increase of 5.5 cents, a little less than 5%. That I want to point out, while it's a larger than normal tax increase, we knew we were in for a larger than normal tax increase because of the approval of the police fire projects. And when we were in the process last January of finalizing the FY17 budget, the estimate for what kind of a tax increase we would be facing at this moment was actually 6.88 cents. When we brought you the long-term financial plan a month ago, excuse me, based on the work that we had done in the intervening months and the savings that we had identified, particularly in the employee benefit area and in the solid waste area because of the every other week collection, we had estimated that we could get that 6.88 cent increase down to 6.3. Since the publication of the long-term financial plan, as we've been finalizing the proposed FY18 budget, we've been able to lower the FY18 expenditures by another $50,000 or so, and to increase non-tax revenues by about $40,000. And that 90 is a little less than another penny of reduction, which gets us down to the estimated 5.5 penny increase that would be required to fund this as proposed. Together with the management team, all of whom are present, we look forward to working with you beginning 2 weeks from tonight and going on from there until late January to finalize a budget for consideration at next March's town meeting.
Thank you for that overview. Anybody on the board have any preliminary questions at this point? Dick?
John, I ask this every couple of months because my memory's so bad. What does a penny represent in the budget, dollar-wise?
A penny, $112,000 is approximately 1 cent.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions right now? So, that's as it should be, because we haven't had a chance to look at the budget documents. So thank you for that overview. I guess the only other item under budget-related matters is to note that we have a proposed meeting schedule of November 15 to talk about revenue and capital, beginning at our regular 6:15 start time. So that would be at our regular meeting 2 weeks from now. We would just start by talking budget, probably for an hour or an hour and a half, quarter and a half, I would think. And then we would do police fire a week later at 5:30. A week after that, being Tuesday after Thanksgiving, we would talk about public works and the offer is to start that at 5 and running to 6:30. Why?
I learned from one of you, excuse me, as I was preparing this, that we had talked previously about using all these Tuesday evenings as the times for these meetings, and I know one of you has another commitment that evening. So the proposal is to start a little earlier than the other meetings will start and finish by 6:30, and that's why we're proposing just the one department, one of the larger, more complex departments for that evening.
Okay, I can say that my calendar may have shifted, but we'll just go ahead with this schedule, and I'll do my best to make it there depending on how everything shakes out.
Or I mean,
No, let's leave it for now.
Okay.
I don't want to schedule by committee. Tuesday, December 6th, regular meeting, 6:15, and we'll again talk about two departments, Parks and Recs and Town Clerk. And then we'll have a special meeting on the 13th to go over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 departments, and then any other open topics. So the plan would be that we would be getting close to some tentative approach to ramping towards approval before the New Year's holiday. Will we anticipate discussing the dedication of surplus as a particular topic in here?
sure. We
As
will.
about Tuesday the 15th?
Yeah, I believe that we should, as part of the revenues discussion, address that, and then we also can address it again later in the process as you see fit.
Very good. Do we need a motion to adopt this proposed schedule, or can we just do it by acclamation? What do you prefer?
As long as there's no objection, and you all accept that this is what we're going to work with, we also can make changes as we go along. I would just caution that we should try to stick to this, since this is what will be out there in the public as being our intent. But obviously, if we need to move that meeting on the 29th or adjust it in any other way, we can do that as we go along.
I don't want to move it. Anybody have any concerns about the schedule for right now? Dick?
I think you brought up a good point about length of the off-night meetings. I certainly, from my memory in the past, the longer they go, the more difficult it is to comprehend and be more thorough about what we're trying to do. So if we could try to keep them to probably a 2-hour max. I know
Sure.
not, okay, in 2 hours we get up and walk out, but, the longer you go, we certainly see it here, the later we get at night, the less attention for the later items.
Ma'am?
Well, I'll weigh in and note that we have tried in the last 3 or 4 years, certainly this year and last year, to make these budget meetings more accessible than I think they previously had been, when we would pick a weekend day and try to meet all day. And so because people's general expectation in the community is that we meet on Tuesday nights and that our meetings are televised, what we've been trying to do is to break the budget presentation up into a series of Tuesday meetings that are going to be televised as regular meetings, so that people in the evening hours and then on reruns or on bctv.com can go back and look at these meetings and can participate to the extent that they want to. And our goal is definitely to try to make those meetings manageable, recognizing that we're also trying to do it in a way that's as accessible as possible. So, definitely. We don't want to be running till 10 o'clock at night. Peter?
Yeah, and I'd just like to supplement that by saying that we were really conscious of which nights were regular meeting nights and which ones weren't, in terms of what we are proposing for the topics to be considered. So we had exactly that in mind, with the idea that on the meeting nights, you'll want to talk about budget for even less than that, less than a couple of hours. So when we have a full slate of regular town business to do, hopefully we'll be spending, somewhere in the maybe 45 minutes or an hour range on budget, and then, could spend a couple of hours, give or take, on the nights that it's just budget. But that's how we've tried to structure this. We've loaded more heavily onto the 3 nights that are special meetings for that reason.
So I also want to note that a representative of the Town Meeting Finance Committee is here, who just looked up. And I don't know whether the budget had yet been posted online, but I'm sure it's going to happen any second.
And tomorrow.
Well,
Yes.
Peter says no, but Jen says yes.
Ah,
So,
thank you.
budget is already up online and is available for anybody to look at. And we encourage anybody who's interested in the budget as a whole or any of these particular department-related budgets to come to our meetings, to direct any comments you may have if you can't come to a meeting, to either town manager's office or to any one of us select board members or to town meeting finance committee. But we'd like everybody to be engaged and to participate and know how our budget's being constructed. Our goal is to make sure that this budgeting process and the budget as a whole is absolutely as transparent as possible. And we encourage everybody to participate. Anything further about the budget at this point? Next item on the agenda is, and I want to thank all of the department heads for coming out tonight and for your assistance in this process as the gallery empties out. Good night. So the next item on the agenda is the solid waste management district. It just says solid waste matters, but I think it's to look at alternative budgets and other alternatives that we may be considering. So, yeah. Peter, are you going to start?
Sure.
Please.
I will set the stage for this, and then if you'd like to have a more detailed presentation, we can receive that from Patrick, who's done the larger, more detailed work on this.
You left the water bottle here.
Sorry. No problem. The solid waste district this year has actually prepared a proposed budget that would include continued operation of the recycling facility there, and one that would involve closing down that recycling facility. If the decision is made to close it down, then the town of Brattleboro, along with all the other members of the solid waste district, will need to send our recycling elsewhere. We have a plan, you will recall, for what we would do in that eventuality, whether we would choose to potentially do that or whether we would find ourselves faced with the necessity of doing it. We do have the option of taking our material to still through Triple T Trucking and our contract with them for curbside collection. The recycling materials would be taken to Casella's facility in Rutland. We know what the cost of that would be, and so at least we know what they would be if the tipping fee stays what it is today. And so there's information presented in this material before you tonight about that alternative, and it's got a little bit of variation to it with some what ifs of if the tipping fee were to increase at Casella versus what it is today, as well as related to the amount of tonnage that we might be taking there, because part of what would happen if the MRF is closed by the solid waste district is the Fairground Road drop-off site would be closed. And so we're not 100% sure of exactly how much of that material would find its way into the Brattleboro curbside collection program. We need to be cautious in our estimate of that, although we do think that the majority of that material is most likely either from out of town or from multifamily households in Brattleboro that are not part of the curbside program. That would account for why people would be taking the material there instead of the more convenient route of just taking it out to the curb. So we believe that the financial data that is presented in this material this evening is conservative in that it doesn't take an overly aggressive posture on either question of what the tipping fee would be in Rutland if we had to take the material there, or on how much of the material from Fairground Road would find its way into the curbside stream. The But the decision tonight is not, the board doesn't need to make a decision about what the town will do. What the board has been asked is to use that information, the sense that we have of this alternative and what it would mean for the town financially compared to the current arrangement and the continued operation of the MRF at the solid waste district, to use that information in order to provide the town of Brattleboro position on the question of a MRF versus no MRF district operation to the solid waste district, which has asked for that kind of input from every participating municipality. So over the course of the last few weeks, the other select boards of all the different towns that participate in the district have been looking at this same question and addressing it from their own particular perspective. Solid Waste District Board will be meeting soon. Dave or Patrick could tell us exactly when, but it's next week sometime, to actually take action on its budget and the assessment program by which it collects funds from the participating municipalities. So the two items that are before you this evening would be, if you choose to take a position to make a recommendation to the Solid Waste Board regarding the MRF versus no MRF question, then this would be the time to do that. And in any case, staff does recommend that you reiterate the position that you've already expressed regarding the assessment program, that we prefer the 50-50 population and grand list methodology for the calculation of the assessments for the member municipalities. We think that since that item also is going to get consideration at the same upcoming Solid Waste District Board meeting, that it's important to restate the town's support for the 50-50 plan.
Anybody on the board have any comments or questions at this point?
Since Bob Spencer's here, I wonder if you would mind giving us it's kind of in lieu's cover letter, but the cost without the MRF is for Brattleboro, the assessment $107,000. And could you talk a little bit about what that would cost, since we're not going to be sending recycling and stuff to the district, what that money is used for? Sure. The continuing services that are required, and a little bit about the SWIP and mothballing the MRF and stuff like that.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to assist you with this decision. Just before I go into that, I do want to acknowledge the work that Dave Scholes and Patrick Moreland have contributed to this process through a special committee we set up last winter called the Alternative Funding Committee, which really came out of this board's budget deliberations a year ago. And we said, can we figure out a way to cover the cost in a fee-for-service method? Anyhow, that ran its course, and there's no easy mechanism to do that. So then we were looking at alternative methods of raising the capital that we need to operate, and that's where this model of using housing units, grand list, population, or some combination came out of. So I just want to acknowledge the many hours and meetings that your people contributed to this budget. It is somewhat surprising when you look at, okay, we close this recycling facility, which has been here for 20 years, and we're going to try to save a lot of money. Well, it doesn't right off the bat save a lot of money, partially because there's some significant ongoing costs with running the solid waste district that are mandated by the state. In fact, Saturday we'll have household hazardous waste collection here in Brattleboro, as well as in Whitingham. Those requirements are ratcheting down to 4 times a year in the next 4 years. So those are increasing costs that we have to account for. So our FY18 budget has 3 events. On top of that, the MRF, as we call it, material recycling facility, we have workman's comp obligations, which are going to continue for the next 3 years, even after the facility closes, due to some incidents and losses in the facility. That's over $50-some thousand in the FY18 budget. We also have ongoing G&A, general administration expenses, and our public outreach and education expenses. which don't go away because the solid waste district has to provide these services. So it was somewhat surprising that we thought we might save quite a bit more money by not running the facility than what the budget actually shows. There's also a transfer of costs that's going on here, and this is hitting more directly the towns that run transfer stations, where the residents buy a sticker and then bring their trash and recyclables. If we close our facility, those towns have to then go out and procure those services privately, just as you've looked at doing here in Brattleboro for, you have curbside collection already, and you have a cost to a private entity. And so that isn't reflected in this budget either. We do know what they are, but it's going to transfer those costs to other towns. So it's fairly complex and was not as much of a cost savings as perhaps we thought it might be.
Thanks, Bob.
Okay.
Bob, it's fair to say that over time, if the MRF winds up being closed, the operations and the expenses at the Wyndham Solid Waste Management District would ultimately become more consolidated as carryover services and obligations phase out?
It should, yes, depending on what mandates the state comes up with, as you all know.
Right.
We also, I just also wanted to acknowledge, I saw there was some press coverage from your previous meeting of how much cost savings you've achieved with the new solid waste every other week. And we actually, I must say, have a very cost-effective program in Brattleboro compared to most of the state, where we're doing what Act 148, Universal Recycling, has envisioned by 2020. It's happened in Brattleboro 5-6 years ahead of schedule. Composting at the curb for residents, recycling. So we have a system that's working. You have really been able to cut your costs and provide more service. And so I think we have a very good public-private partnership with Triple T, the town, and the district. And of course, there are some opportunities to make it more efficient, and that's what we're working on. But I just wanted to acknowledge that it's been quite a productive relationship.
I also want to thank you very much for bringing this to us way earlier than in the past. I have the sense that oftentimes in budget season, we've learned about what the district, the solid waste management district, is going to need way later in the process. And having this at this point as we begin our budget process is way helpful. Thank you.
You're very welcome, and that's why we're doing it. And so next Thursday, the 10th, Dave Scholes, as your representative, or John Allen, or both, will have the opportunity to vote on the budget. I think you know this, but I think for people that are listening, Brattleboro carries 6 votes. And the next largest votes is the town of Westminster with 2, and all the other 17 member towns that vote have 1 vote. So you have some clout.
Just want to point out that getting to this point in early November was a result, with Patrick's help as well, of starting in April. So
Yeah,
that's what it takes to get an early
Yes.
budget.
Yeah, it's been an awful lot of work. There is a cost that's not in Lou Bruzzo's memo. Lou is chair of the district, and he's in Dover tonight with their select board, and I'm here with you. So there will be a one-time cost to decommission and close out that MRF. We don't know what it is, but I would ballpark it at around $100,000. Let's say we stop collecting recyclables June 30th. We're still going to have a tipping floor full of materials. We'll probably work another month. I want to provide a 1-month retention bonus to have employees stay till the end, so that Patrick and David and I aren't sorting recyclables the last month. Then there will be some final closing and mothballing costs that we don't know what they are. So there is a one-time cost. And I have lots of worksheets on this budget if anyone's interested, going into more depth.
Anybody on the board have any questions or comments at this point? looks to me like at this point, the item of business before the board is to decide if we're prepared to provide direction to our Wyndham Solid Waste Management District representatives about whether Brattleboro's vote should be cast to continue the materials recycling facility or to stop the materials recycling facility, in which case we would be doing private transfer of our recyclables to a contractor like Casella and Rowland. Anybody on the board want to express their view about that?
Can I just ask a question?
Yes,
Because there's so
please.
many figures here, it's confusing. How much, and I know all this tonnage and all this stuff, how much will it, and again, I know we won't know for sure, but can you give us a ballpark on how much it's going to cost to send our recycling through Casella and Triple T?
Yes.
I mean, I'm sure it's in here somewhere, I just can't find it.
So if you would
Probably
go
right
to
in
the
front of me.
second page
Uh-huh.
of the memo
Yeah.
that we've received,
Yeah, which one of these numbers is the one I should
and look at the bottom chart
Yep,
or the middle chart, either way.
yep.
What, may I?
Would you go ahead?
Yeah, what the bottom chart shows you is an all-in. So that's those figures for a few different scenarios because of the uncertainties.
Yep.
Shows you what the total cost would be of paying our fair share at the district
Yep.
and of paying for the Triple T Casella portion of the service. What the middle of the page shows you is the isolated cost that would be explicitly for, we would pay it to Triple T. The payment to Triple T would be for $35 a ton for their hauling of it, and then whatever is the actual tipping fee that they encounter at Casella when they're delivering the material. You see that shown several different ways because, you know, we're talking about a budget year that would begin more than 6 months from now and end more than 18 months from now. And so there's, you know, somewhere in there is the sweet spot, but there is the potential that the tipping fee could rise during that period. I suppose there's also the potential that the tipping fee could be reduced and we would save money compared to the lower side of these estimates. But what you see on this page is a range between a low of about 41,000 and a high of about 84,000.
Right.
Somewhere in that range, most likely in the 60-ish range is what the cost would be.
Okay, and these are incorporated in the second chart, which would be what we pay the solid waste management district with us recycling it on our own, or moving the recycling on our own.
So,
Is that this,
right,
this
so
little
you,
chart?
So you take that
Yeah,
figure, that data related to
And
what the
put-
recycling
Yep.
going on the Casella option would cost.
Yep.
And bring it down for a few different scenarios and add to it the no MRF, the town's
Yep.
share of a no MRF budget
Yep.
for the solid waste district, and you get these total figures.
Can you just explain to me when it says 50% of fairground, 70% of fairground?
Absolutely.
What that means?
So at Fairground Road, where people take their recyclables and deposit them themselves into large community containers, there is the possibility that some of the material going in there is going in from households that could participate in the Brattleboro curbside program if they wish, but for whatever reason are just choosing to take it to Fairground Road. The more likely source of that material are households in Brattleboro that are not eligible to participate in the curbside program because they're multifamily, they live in a multifamily unit in a building with more than 4 units, or for some other reason, or that they're actually from outside of Brattleboro and would have no opportunity to participate in the Brattleboro curbside program because they might be bringing it in from one of the surrounding towns. It is likely that the majority of the material at Fairground Road is from those other sources and would not, if the Fairground Road site was closed down, which would have to happen if the MRF operation is closed.
Yeah.
If that's how that went, it is likely that the increase in recycling tonnage that would be collected by Triple T and curbside and taken to Casella would be less than 50% of what's happening at Fairground Road. But we don't know that.
Okay.
They have no data that would suggest that we could have certainty about that. So what we've shown here is a 50% scenario and a 75% scenario. So these are conservative numbers. These are assuming actually that the majority of the material at Fairground Road actually would come into the
System.
the curbside program, when in fact the opposite is probably true.
Okay.
And then the $52 a ton and the $62 a ton figures
Yes.
at the top.
Yep,
The 52 is the current cost,
that's correct.
and the $60 per ton alternative would contemplate that Casella's charge would go from, it was $15 last year, it's $17 now, and that it would go to $25
That's
in a
correct.
one-year period, which would be a staggering sort of increase.
That's right. Again, adding a layer of conservatism to this. So we're really comfortable that the numbers that we've put into the town's budget will be sufficient for whatever the outcome of this is from all these different permutations. And we're really comfortable that the information before you provides a conservative picture rather than an overly rosy picture of the savings that could be achieved if we do make the change.
So the way I see it, in almost all scenarios, the town, almost all scenarios, the town saves money with the materials recycling facility closed.
That's correct.
And the only areas where that's not reality is if we switch at the district level to an assessment model that's very different from what currently exists. Because right now it's totally population based. And if we were going to have population and half grand list value as the assessment model, and 3/4 of the stuff that's going in the bins at Fairground Road was coming into our waste stream, and Casella was raising the price by $8 a ton, then costs might increase some. But even then, costs wouldn't increase. They would actually be lower. It's just that it'd be more to do it without the MRF than with the MRF.
May I say that another way?
Please.
So, up until that last sentence, you nailed it. The way I would say that last sentence is that compared to the cost as it is projected for status quo at the district, any of these other alternatives, all but one of a dozen, provides a savings to the town. Since there is the possibility that the district board might vote for a more favorable, an assessment model that would be more favorable to the town of Brattleboro, the final outcome of this is more uncertain than that. But if the situation stays as status quo at the district in terms of the assessment model and the operation there, then any of the town's no MRF alternatives are financially favorable.
So I'm in favor of instructing our representative to cast his votes for the no MRF alternative, and also restating our endorsement of the 50% assessment model. That's how I'm going to vote, because I think it makes more sense. It's fairer for the town. Anybody else have any comments?
No, I'm fine with that too, and if John were sitting next to me, he would be advocating for the single stream.
You can hold
system.
on earlier.
Yes. No, it makes sense to me.
Anybody else on the board have anything they want to say? Anybody who's in attendance have anything they want to say? Yes, Franz.
Franz Reitzman. Speaking as a town meeting representative, I have to say, looking at this for the first time, it's virtually incomprehensible. I can sort of get a flavor for it, but I really, I don't know, it's what I would say is the best thing. It's just about impossible. So in terms of presenting this to the community at large, I think you've got a tough job ahead of you, how you're going to make it at all clear what these choices are. I'd also ask one thing, which is whether there's a difference in what actually happens to the material depending on this decision. Does one thing happen if it goes through the MRF and something else happens in terms of what's recovered and where it's sold or how it's disposed of? To me, those are really important questions because I want the material that we're collecting to be reused somehow, not just we send it to this guy who then dumps it out in the ocean, but it saves us a little money. So that would be my other question is what actually happens to the stuff under the different scenarios?
Dave will answer the latter question.
Well, actually, the only, I'm going to ask Bob to get more specific. The only thing that I'm aware of that would change is that if our food waste, if all of our composting, since it all goes in one truck with Triple T, they've got divided trucks, that would go up to Rutland instead of to the local district, which we started a pretty successful and growing composting operation, and a lot of the contractors around are buying it at a really good rate. But that would go away. Would you answer the specifics about especially the 3 through 7s, Bob?
Yeah.
Is there any difference?
Just on the compost?
Yeah.
There is no decision right now where the compost, the organic fraction that's collected would go. I've talked to Triple T about it. It could still come to Wyndham Solid Waste. They would have to transfer it to another facility, which is probably Greenfield, Mass. So it could be more economical to stay in Brattleboro.
It wouldn't go to Rutland.
No. So that's the thing. This is the bottles and cans and paper and cardboard, the traditional recyclables. And this would go to a certified facility run by Casella Waste in Rutland, where they do essentially the same thing we do, but with more sophisticated processing technology. The one advantage to the town, and this was an issue obviously, is the 3 through 7 plastics. They are taking those plastics. We still get them, but we prefer not to take them because we just have to throw them away. So they would still be recycled in accordance with the state requirements.
The other thing, Franz, is that all the things that are in that document are all the possible scenarios that might develop. When we meet again in 2 weeks, I assume, since our goal at the Waste District is to finalize our budget next Thursday night and send it out, a lot more will be stable because we'll know whether it's the MRF budget or the existing operations budget. Then the numbers, then everything flowing from that is pretty clear. Although I'm sure we can confuse you again in a couple of weeks if you want.
And so to follow up a little bit on Dave's question or comment, over the course of the last 3 or 4 years, annually we've raised some substantial concerns here at the Brattleboro Select Board about the charges that we're getting from the Wyndham Solid Waste Management District. And I'm going to try to steer clear of the way in which we've characterized the charges that have come through the assessment over the years. But we've had questions about whether we're being fairly charged for garbage collection services. And over the course of this past year, we dedicated Brattleboro personnel time and effort to looking as part of a global overview and review of the entirety of the Solid Waste Management District budgeting process so that we could verify for ourselves that we understood exactly how it was working and make sure that the town was being charged fairly. And right now, all the towns in the Wyndham Solid Waste Management District are being asked to say, do they want a budget presented where there is a recycling facility on Fairground Road or not? And we've got a lot of different alternatives for what it'll wind up costing us because there's uncertainties involved. But what I'm hearing mostly across the table at this point is that it's probably more cost effective for the town as a whole if there's no recycling facility on Fairground Road. And that we pay to take our recycling or truck our recycling up to Rutland. So that's really the question that's at issue today.
That is the question. Forgive me, because I
Again?
hope in offering a quick clarification, I don't make it more confusing. But you said Fairground Road twice. The MRF, the MRF is Ferry Road.
Fairground Road. I mean Ferry Road.
Okay, thank you.
Ferry Road. I'm sorry, Ferry Road. Sorry.
I heard Ferry Road.
Yeah, that's what I said. You know. Any other questions or comments anybody has?
There's TBD. You won't find it there.
I understand.
Okay.
I move that the Brattleboro Select Board instruct the Wyndham Solid Waste Management District Representative, David Scholes, to cast our votes in favor of the no materials recycling facility budget, and that we continue to endorse the 50% assessment model, population, and grand list. Is there any further discussion? We have a motion to endorse the no MRF Wyndham Solid Waste Management District budget and to go with the 50/50 assessment model. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstaining?
I'll abstain.
So that carries 301. Thanks, Bob, for coming.
You're welcome. Thank you for your consideration, everyone.
The next matter on the agenda is the Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation subordination agreement for 343 John Seitz Drive. Peter?
At that location, BDCC owns a building. They're doing some substantial work or have plans to do some substantial work there. As part of that, they're going to refinance the debt on that particular property. The town was an original creditor back in 1984 in the purchase of this property and the development of the Exit 1 Industrial Park. The financing for that property was refinanced in 1996 and is now being refinanced again. We were last in line in terms of the subordinate position of the creditors. We were last in line in 1984. We agreed to remain last in line when it was refinanced in 1996, and we would still be last in line if you approve this evening. So this and the next item on the agenda both involve situations where the question for us was more about form and process and whether the documentation you're being asked to approve was properly prepared, and less about protecting the town's interests, since we, in this case, are unlikely ever to collect any money from this. But the community benefits from the operation of the industrial facility at this location and from the overall economic activity that's generated by Exit 1 Industrial Park, which is exactly the reason why the town invested the funds that it did in the initial work in 1984. So it's our recommendation on this item, as it will be on the next item, that you approve the subordination agreement as proposed.
Any questions from anybody on the board? We're ready for a motion, please.
Move we authorize the town manager, Peter Elwell, to execute the subordination agreement with People's United Bank for the BDCC refinancing of 343 John Seitz Drive at Exit 1 Industrial Park.
We have a motion to endorse the subordination agreement with respect to refinancing at 343 John Seitz Drive. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? That carries 4-0. And now, Peter, the next matter relating to Whetstone Station.
Yes, this is exactly the same action that's requested. It's exactly the same impact for the town in terms of we're currently sitting in last position and we would remain in last position after the refinancing. What's different is that instead of BDCC and the larger scale industrial park setting as it was applicable in the last case, in this case we're talking about the refinancing of the first mortgage at the Whetstone Station Brewery and Restaurant, and the town, they have an additional debt at the operation there that includes the town's small business assistance program loan that was originally in a principal amount of $40,000. Whetstone has been a good payer. They've always made their payments on time. They've got the balance down to $7,000. In this case, we fully expect that we'll continue to receive those payments in a timely manner and that we will receive our full reimbursement for the loan that the town made. So in that sense, this is substantively different from the last one, but otherwise the action in front of you is the request to approve a subordination agreement so that they can refinance the first mortgage. And the town is in the third and last position related to this property and would remain in the third and last position. We recommend your approval of the subordination agreement.
Anybody have any questions about the Whetstone Station subordination agreement? We're ready, please, for a motion.
I move that we authorize Town Manager Peter Elwell to execute the subordination agreement with the Brattleboro Savings and Loan Association for the Whetstone refinancing.
We have a motion to authorize execution of the subordination agreement as to Whetstone Station. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 4-0. The next item on the agenda is the Arts Committee proposals, but as noted, neither of the artists are available for presentation today. I would note that when they're ready to present, I'd like to see not just the proposed work of art for the garage, but also the one that's proposed for the High Grove.
Okay.
Because it's not included, the mural rendering, I don't think was included.
And if they could do it in color, because you really can't understand
Right.
what it looks like.
But I mean, I got a sense at least I got a general sense as to the
The other one,
Whetstone Station, but
There is an image here, but we'll ask for them to give us higher quality and color photos
that
to
it
share
there?
it. Yeah, that's it there.
oh,
It's got some
Nice to be able to see
geometric images there.
okay.
Yeah.
Better picture, please, for next time.
Sure.
And then the next item on the agenda is a proposal to prohibit single-use plastic bags in retail stores in Brattleboro. We received an inquiry from Mr. Maciel. Is that you?
Dr. Maciel.
Dr. Maciel, about proposal to ban single-use plastic bags in Brattleboro, and it was considered for inclusion on the agenda. And so this is the opportunity, Dr. Maciel, for you to make whatever presentation you want about this matter. And you can either come to the table or stand there, whichever you prefer. If you want to sit, you can do it at the table. If you want to stand, you do it at the mic there.
First, I want to thank you for putting this on your agenda. Paper or plastic? Not even the question that you hear anymore. You go to a Price Chopper or Hannaford's, and everything goes into a plastic bag. It's no wonder that over 1 trillion plastic bags, 1 trillion of these, are consumed in the U.S. every year. According to the World Wildlife Fund Report 2005, plastic bags account for 10% of the debris along our coastlines. Now, Vermont doesn't have a coastline, but we do consume fish. And plastic bags are playing havoc with fish populations. Over 200 species are mistaking plastic bags for food, consuming them. There's even evidence that that plastic bags break up into petropolymers that even enter our food chain. Plastic bags are just a bad idea. They have been. And they're ubiquitous. They're all over the globe. On average, for every square mile of ocean, there's 46,000 of these pieces of these floating. So it's a problem. It was a bad idea to begin with. They're seen all over the globe. The British Antarctic Survey reports that plastic bags are seen floating as far north of the Arctic Circle and as far south as the Falkland Islands. The LA Times reported bird life in Midway, 2,800 miles from California coast, has been decimated by birds such as albatrosses feeding these to their young, choking them, killing them. But if only 1 out of 5 people in the U.S. use cloth bags instead of plastic, we would save well over 1 trillion, actually 1.5 trillion bags in a decade. Plastic bags like plastic water bottles and styrofoam cups are a bad idea. And eventually, I'm convinced, eventually they will be banned, just like smoking has been banned in restaurants and just like seatbelts has been made regulation. My proposal to you today is to consider an ordinance in Brattleboro to prohibit single-use plastic bags in retail stores. Vermonters have a well-deserved reputation for going green, for being environmentally responsible on most issues. But our state legislature has dragged its feet on this one. 4 years ago, I wrote a letter to the reformer that got a nice response, and I spoke to our legislators, and they said they agreed, yeah, plastic bags are a bad idea, but it's on the back burner until further study. That was 4 years ago. In 2012, the reformer wrote an op-ed piece proposing a ban on plastic bags. That has gone no place. A couple of years ago, the state legislator in Bennington wrote a proposal to ban plastic bags, and that was tabled in the state legislature. Brattleboro would not be alone in this ordinance. San Francisco was the first to ban plastic bags in 2007, followed by San Jose, most recently Portland, Oregon, indeed whole countries, Canada, Ireland, Italy, Bangladesh. A host of countries have complete or partial bans on plastic bags. China has imposed a tax on them, thereby reducing oil consumption by over 350 million barrels a year. So what are the arguments against banning plastic bags? It can't be an economic one. The Brattleboro Reformer in their 2014 article noted that retailers across the country would save over $265 million a year by not having to provide them. It can't be a pragmatic one. As I've said, other countries, other cities are doing fine without them. I have friends and family in Portland and San Jose, California, and I go there and people have adjusted. They adjusted very quickly. People adjust. They get used to new ways of doing things. Indeed, when my family and friends come to Vermont, they're astounded that we still use these. We haven't caught up with more progressive cities and towns in the country. The biggest argument, I think, is a philosophical one. Some see that a ban on plastic bags would be an imposition on their right to use plastic bags. That's kind of like the same arguments that were used to banning smoking and requiring seatbelts. When it comes to the good of the common weal, we make sensible regulations, sensible ordinances that are good for the people. So I'm urging you to make Brattleboro a leader on this one. Have Brattleboro become a leader in the county. Have Brattleboro become a leader in the state. Have Brattleboro nudge the state legislature to finally do, which is inevitable, to ban these things.
Thank you, Dr. Mayfield.
Okay.
Anybody on the board want to speak to this?
Well, I'm not certainly looking, I'm not going to support doing an ordinance just sitting here and going, being brought to us here this evening. I heard from a couple of retail stores that said, how are you going to do this on, with no notice, with no opportunity really for people to engage in a conversation. And certainly I suspect and I know that there are retail stores that offer both paper and plastic. And so from a voluntary, the consumer has the right to ask for paper. And I believe that certainly stores that I'm frequent, they are offering paper. But I think to say definitively right now that I would support a ordinance banning plastic is not where I'm at right now.
Anybody else on board right now?
Yeah. Well, I actually have seen a number of programs and quite a bit of information about this. I also found out when we went on vacation, we were camping on Cape Cod, and Cape Cod doesn't use plastic bags anymore. And from what the people in the little town that we camp in said, it was a really simple transition, no problem at all. But so I would accept that I know that the right way to do this is to set up some sort of a process. So I guess what I would like to see us do is put this on the town meeting warning and have a conversation about it at town meeting. If the rest of the board agrees. And people would have plenty of time to think about it and talk about it, and then we could bring it before the town reps.
Can I?
Yeah, please.
What I'm about to say has nothing to do with the merits of the proposal, because I actually am one of those people that brings the canvas bag to the grocery store. But as David and Dick just said, for me, it's the process. And I think there really does need to be a town-wide discussion about it. I don't feel, we've had other issues like this. I don't feel as one of five that I should be the one that bans plastic bags. I think it needs to be a broader discussion. I don't think that the five of us should put it on the town meeting warning. We've had this discussion before. And I think it needs to be the process, which is you go and get signatures and you get enough people to say, yes, we support this, or we at least want to have the conversation. Because I think it is something that we need to have a town-wide discussion on because it impacts a lot of people. So my opinion would be that it needs to go through the process. There needs to be signatures collected, get it on the town meeting, get it in front of town meeting, and then make the decision that way. And it educates people to what you want to do, doing it in a more public process than what we have right now.
So this time of year, we often get a range of potential ballot initiatives or public interest items that are presented to us for endorsement. And right now I'm aware of 4 different ones that are being presented. This plastic bag matter. 2 meetings ago, we had a request to endorse change of the name of Columbus State of Indigenous Peoples Day. There's a petition circulating relating to looking to take on Wickby Hill land to do a public trail. And then I've had also inquiry about Compassionate Cities endorsement for Brattleboro or designation for Brattleboro. And I want to speak just broadly to this. The business of the local government is to make sure that municipal services are delivered in a effective manner consistent with taxpayers' ability to pay. And that means that day to day, you know, we work on roads and bridges and sidewalks and water and sewer and police and fire, and then other services that are recognized as being core municipal services, parks and recs, library, schools as well, although schools are dealt with through a different municipality, but it's another core municipal service that has to be provided. And it's been my experience, and I've been involved in municipal government for a long time, better part of 2 decades now, that when we get involved in specific issue-oriented related matters that don't go right to our core responsibility as a municipality, we really run the risk of adversely impacting our ability to effectively deliver those services. And really, if you want to look at inventory of the things that we need to be focusing on, the comprehensive review of town operations that was just concluded is just a great roadmap. But the further out we get from our core mission, I think the more danger we create to our ability to do what we need to do. You know, we had this come up 2 meetings ago, and at that point there were people presenting to us and members of the board who said, well, it's the right thing to do, and it's correct, and so we should endorse. And you know, I thought about it. It really raises the question to what extent morals and ethics and justice and fairness play a role in what we're doing. And I think that those things certainly play a role in my decision making here on Select Board, and I think it does for everybody. I mean, everybody on the board is here because we want to make sure that public good is being served through municipal government. And I think really when you get down to it at its core, it's a matter of making sure that people's basic needs are being met so that people can live better lives and engage in productive pursuits. And when I go to the market, I always pack myself in paper, you know, and I never take a plastic bag. But my view is that really the way that we should be approaching this, just like all these other potential ballot items, is through the process that's set up in the town charter for collecting signatures through a petition, and then presenting that either through a ballot item or through town meeting. So, you know, I totally agree with what it is that you presented, but
Okay.
you know, I think the most important thing here is to focus on what we do day to day. So it's a little more of a speech than you may have wanted.
No,
I
really
wanted to
appreciate
say
your
it
thoughts.
last time, and I never got to because they haven't brought the Indigenous Peoples Day thing back to us. But
They will.
yeah, I'm sure they will.
There are about 300 signatures.
So, and once they bring signatures, you know, that's a great thing. I'm totally in favor, but.
No, I really appreciate your thoughts, so I'll be looking for your signature when I'm in front of the co-op.
So,
Before you go, though, can we invite Dr. Massio to talk with the town attorney and to get the right language for a petition?
Yeah, our town manager's
I would
office or
appreciate
town
that.
clerk's office, sure. So the resources, town manager's office
Yeah.
and town clerk's office and the town attorney are resources if an effort's gonna be made to collect signatures to put something on a ballot, either for town meeting, warning, or for a ballot item.
Yeah.
And those are the resources for beginning down that road.
Yeah, you
Okay,
can, you
good,
can come
because-
up with a petition and not have it worded right and not get what you thought you were
Yeah,
asking
in
for.
the letter that I sent you, I sent a sample ordinance, so I'll just run that by the attorney.
Right.
I would appreciate that time with
Cool.
the attorney.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Does anybody want to make a motion? We're all set right now.
No, I think we know how it's
Yeah,
going to
yeah.
come out, so
Yeah.
I-
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
I think we've got really just 2 other brief items, 3 items. So, Peter, the next item on the agenda is the Bulletproof Vest Partnership Grant application.
Yes, and it is exactly what it says. So we have been awarded a grant by the Department of Justice, Bureau of Justice Assistance, for $1,400 for assisting in the purchase of bulletproof vests. Every police officer needs to wear one. We budget town funds for these. We seek grant funds whenever we can, and sometimes we receive the grant, and it offsets some of what we otherwise would have had to spend from town funding. So we recommend that you approve accepting and appropriating this grant.
Any questions or comments about the bulletproof vest grant? We're ready for motion, please.
I move to accept and appropriate a grant in the amount of $1,400 from the Department of Justice, Bureau of Justice Assistance to help pay for the purchase of bulletproof vests.
Any further discussion about the bulletproof vest grant? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? That carries 4-0. Peter, you going to speak to this, or is Mike going to speak to this next one?
Sure. I'll summarize. It's another straightforward one. If you have a question, Mike's here to answer. This is a very large grant in contrast to the last one, which is a very small one. This is an application that we're asking you to authorize us to file with the Department of Homeland Security and FEMA. It's an assistance to firefighters grant of almost $1 million. And the reason that we're seeking this is we think actually, even though it's a large scale grant, that the town has a legitimate potential of receiving this grant due to the circumstances of the fact that we've got an aged and increasingly unreliable ladder truck, the only one that we have in our department, that is not to modern standards because we had to fit it into the old fire station. And so right now, at this moment, we are gaining the benefit of larger, more appropriate modern facilities based on the decisions that you and town meeting have made regarding the facilities. And so we will use that information to strengthen our grant application to say, in terms of protecting the community in the manner that is designed, intended by this grant, that this would be a very significant improvement in public safety for our community to be able to have a new and modern, properly designed and properly sized aerial ladder truck to put into the new central fire station. If we don't receive this, this is a truck that's on the capital improvement plan, the equipment replacement plan for 2020, and frankly, it would probably need to be moved up from that, and we might have to consider borrowing for this because we're sinking increasing amounts of money into keeping it on the road. So we would ask to give it our best shot to receive this grant, that you approve the application for an assistance to firefighters grant through the Department of Homeland Security and FEMA.
What year is the truck, Mike?
It was put into service in 1991. And as Peter said, it's really starting to show its age.
1991?
Right.
105-foot aerial.
Yeah.
Pierce.
That's 26 years ago?
25 years
25 years ago.
It hasn't run out yet.
Yeah.
Certainly, we've got our money's worth.
Yeah. True enough.
Anybody have any questions about this grant application? Dick?
Well, I see this is in the FY18 line item.
The expenditure is shown there, but then if you look at the bottom of the plan, there's the grant revenue for it is shown to offset it.
Okay, and then
There's a $50,000 town match that would have to, if we get the grant, we'll have to invest $50,000 in this. So
You'd have to put 38 into the.
So there's a $950,000 credit that's shown in the revenues towards the $1 million purchase of the truck.
I see this as $1 million and the grants for 900,000, so the total would be 950, correct?
It's similar to the grant. So the structure of this program is similar to when we say $175,000 grant with VTrans to do our road work, but there's actually a portion of that that's town matched. So they say they're awarding a grant for 175, what you're actually getting is 157,500, and the balance is the town match.
Okay.
And this would be similar to that with $950,000 worth of grant and $50,000 worth of town match.
Any other questions? Ready for motion, please?
I move that we approve the fire department's application for a $990,000 assistance to firefighters grant from the Department of Homeland Security, FEMA, to pay for a new aerial ladder truck.
We have a motion to apply for a grant for a new ladder truck. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? It carries 4-0. And then the final item on the public meeting agenda is the sand bid.
So you have in your materials for this evening's meeting the memorandum from Public Works that recommends the award to Zaluzny Excavating at $8.70 per yard for an estimated total cost of $21,750. We have $28,000 budgeted. Hopefully we wouldn't need to order again, partway through the winter if we have a really heavy winter. But you can see that there's a range of bids here. They're pretty tight, pretty competitive. Zaluzny, in addition to being the low bid, is the nearest. I was going over this with Steve Barrett earlier today, and he advised me, because Zaluzny is so close, their gravel pit is so close to the town's facility, and because the bulk of the costs involved in a contract like this are for trucking expenses, it's not unexpected that they could offer the best price, and we think that it's ready for your approval and award.
Any questions or comments about the sand bid? We're ready for a motion, please.
To award the bid for winter sand to Zaluzny Excavating in the amount unit price of $8.70 per cubic yard, with an expected total cost of $21,750 to purchase 2,500 cubic yards of sand.
We have the motion for the annual sand purchase. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? That carries 4-0. That's the end of the business on our public meeting agenda. We're ready for motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So motion to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? That carries 4-0. I want to thank everybody who's been watching our meeting on TV, whether live or recorded. I want to thank everybody who's been in attendance tonight. Thank our BCTV operators, our member of the press, and our ASL interpreters. Good night.
We should just take the sand up.